An epic encounter at sea. A Cape Cod lobster diver is recovering from injuries after he says he got caught in the mouth of a humpback whale. Our David Bienick just spoke with this man and is live in Wellfleet. David, this is unbelievable.
Absolutely, Maria. It is a whale of a tale. Some might say a whopper of a fish story, but this one comes with eyewitnesses.
He was trying to get me out.
Still in scrubs from his trip to the hospital, Michael Packard has pains in his legs and a story of biblical proportions. Packard was diving off his lobster boat, was near the bottom when he says all of a sudden he felt as if he'd been hit by a truck.
And everything went black. And all I could feel was just muscle and skin all around me.
Packard says he was in total darkness and he could feel the whale's movement in the water. But at first, he didn't realize what was happening.
It was like, did I just get bit by a shark? Or no, it's not a shark. I'm in a whale's mouth.
You figured that out while you're inside the whale?
Yes.
He struggled, thought about his wife and 2 sons, and thought he might die. Then, after about 20 or 30 seconds, he says the whale spit him out.
And then all of a sudden, I saw light and white water everywhere. And all of a sudden, I was thrown from his mouth. He was shaking his head, trying to eject me out of his mouth.
Packard's shipmate saw him come flying out of the water. The captain of a charter boat that was nearby says he did too.
Wasn't sure what it was. Then when I saw the white flipper fin on the side, I go, that's a whale. And then all of a sudden I see Mike feet first coming out of the water like this.
I think I was in shock a bit. I had to actually pull over and call him back and say, what did you tell me?
Packard says the whale was a humpback about 35 to 40 feet long that might have mistaken his scuba bubbles for a school of fish. He says the last thing he saw was the whale's tail swimming away.
As soon as I landed in the water and was floating there in excruciating pain, I was like, oh my God, I'm alive.
What a story. Well, Packard says he does have some pain in his legs, but the whale never broke the skin. Packard says he plans to be back in the water as soon as he's feeling a bit better. In fact, he says he feels very lucky. While he was at the hospital, a nurse came up and asked him to jot down some lottery numbers.
Off the coast of Massachusetts, a sort of replay of the biblical book of Jonah. A diver was indeed swallowed up where he says he was, and he's got a whale of a survivor's tale to tell. I don't know, Carrie Drew, it's a little fishy to me. Something's doesn't sit right.
Something's not adding up for you and for a lot of people who are hearing this. But this is a story that does have a lot of people talking this morning because it is pretty interesting. A diver off the coast of Cape Cod says he's lucky to be alive this morning after he was swallowed by a whale on Friday and then spit out. He says he was just out looking for lobster when something slammed into him. And by the time he realized where he was, inside the whale's mouth, he says he thought he was going to die.
All of a sudden, I just felt like I got hit by a freight train, and everything went black.
But this was no freight train. Michael Packard says he had an extremely rare run-in with a humpback whale.
It went black, and I was like, oh my God, what the heck, where am I? Did I just get bit by a great white?
Michael says he found himself trapped inside the mouth of a whale that was feeding off of Race Point in Provincetown on Friday morning. It took him a second to understand what had just happened.
And then I realized after I said it's not a shark, the only other thing is I just got eaten by a whale.
He says he tried to kick and punch his way out, but with no luck, he thought this was how he was going to die.
All I thought about was my boys, my 2 young boys, and my wife and my family. And
Michael says the humpback was thrashing around when the whale suddenly spit him out.
All of a sudden, I saw light, and I saw white water, and I saw blue sky, and I could feel the whale just thrashing, and he threw me out of his mouth, and I landed on the water.
Michael's friend Joe Francis was in a charter boat nearby and saw the whole thing happen.
The next thing I know, I saw Mike come out feet first, his flippers flying up in the air and land back in the water.
Joe says he raced over to help pull Mike out of the water to safety.
Joe, I was in the whale's mouth. I was inside of the whale. I mean, he was totally not in big shock, but he was. What he says when life passed before him, that's. You realize you're inside of a whale's mouth. There's not much you can do.
So could things have gotten worse if the whale decided to swallow? Humpback expert Juke Robbins from the Center of Coastal Studies weighs in.
So the mouth itself can be quite large, but the possibility of swallowing anything large is not there. There's no possibility of that.
Michael says he feels lucky to be alive and was asked if he would ever dive again.
Absolutely. It's my passion. It's what I do for a living. Very few people do it, and I get to get down into a different world away from the hustle and bustle.
Miraculously, he was released from Cape Cod Hospital Friday afternoon, just hours after the incident, suffering only soft tissue damage and a dislocated knee. There is some skepticism this morning, a lot of people questioning the story. And at least one doctor at that hospital where he was treated in Cape Cod telling the New York Post that a person with this kind of encounter should expect more serious injuries, even hearing loss, because of the sudden change in water pressure. So as you said, Rosanna, kind of fishy. He's able to do an interview. You know, he's fine.
I want to believe him.
I want to believe him too, but it is kind of bizarre, to say the least.
Okay,
Yes.
it's good to be skeptical,
Yeah,
right?
be skeptical, but yes, he does have his story to back himself up and his witness who saw it to back it up.
Right.
And that's about it.
All right.
Yes.
Carrie, thank you so much.
Sure.
We need a little distraction in our lives. You know what I mean?
Now to a CBSN Boston exclusive. A lobsterman says that he was swallowed up and spit out by a whale off of Provincetown. Provincetown fire officials tell us that the diver was 45 feet down when the whale grabbed him. The whale then surfaced and let that diver, Michael Packard, go. He was then pulled back onto his boat and brought to shore. CBSN Boston was the only camera there as the diver left the hospital. No one can tell the story like Michael himself.
I'm a lobster diver out of Provincetown, Massachusetts. And I was diving today. And I jumped over and I got down to about 45 feet of water. And all of a sudden I just felt this huge bump and everything went dark. And I could sense that I was moving. And I was like, oh my God, did I just get bit by a shark? And then I felt around and I realized there was no teeth. And I had felt really no great pain. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm in a whale's mouth. I'm in a whale's mouth. And he's trying to swallow me. And I thought to myself, okay, this is it. I'm gonna die. And I thought about my kids and my wife. There's no getting out of there. And then all of a sudden, he went up to the surface and just erupted and started shaking his head. And I just got thrown in the air and landed in the water, and I was free, and I just floated there. And I was just, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe I got out of that. And I'm here to tell it, and I thought my legs were broken, but I'm all bruised up, and I made it.
What were you thinking when you were in the grasp of this whale, other than you're going to die?
It was happening so fast. My only thought was how to get out of that mouth, and I realized there was no overcoming a beast of that size, that he was going to do with me what he wanted to do, and it was either he spit me out or he swallowed me, and I didn't. And I was actually in his mouth probably a good 30 seconds, but I still had my regulator in my mouth. I was still breathing, and I was just wondering. Actually, one of the things that went through my mind is just, oh my God, what if he does swallow me? And here I am, I'm breathing air, and I'm gonna breathe in this whale's mouth until my air runs out. Crazy stuff.
Did a fisherman come by and help you when you got spit out?
What when I dive for lobsters, my mate, he follows my bubbles. And so he was right next to me and he saw the whale come up and throw me out. And he pulled right over, and then another boat helped carry me and pulled me into the boat.
Well, what an incredible story. So thankful that he's okay.
Did it really happen? Questions are being raised about the real-life Jonah, the guy who claims he was swallowed by a whale.
I just was in there struggling, banging.
Michael Packard was lobster diving in Cape Cod on Friday when he says the humpback whale sucked him right into his mouth before spitting him out after 30 seconds.
He was just going along, and I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Whale of a tail sounds fishy, goes this headline. You would expect more serious injuries, one Cape Cod doctor was quoted as saying. He had no soft tissue damage and no broken bones. But this 54-year-old scuba diver says he totally believes the story.
I believe it fully. It is possible.
Why? Because Reiner Schimpf had an almost identical experience back 2 years ago and has the photos to prove it. That's his body sticking out of the mouth of a whale who'd swallowed him off the coast of South Africa when he was filming footage of the sardine run.
Without the picture, it's very difficult to prove that you've actually been inside.
Whale swallowing humans is exceedingly rare. The odds it will happen are 1 in a trillion, according to one expert.
He wasn't harmed, I wasn't harmed, and it was like a happy end.
Now, this story, as the story of Jonah, can be unbelievable to many, as this type of situation, as an expert, according to Inside Edition, claims it to be 1 in a trillion, is exceedingly rare. But if we are to use the biblical standards and also secular legal standards, but for the sake of this video topic, we'll focus on the biblical standard, which is documented in 2 Corinthians 13, verse 1, where it says, "Every matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses." Or an Old Testament verse in Deuteronomy 19:15 says, "A lone witness is not sufficient to establish any wrongdoing or sin against a man, regardless of what offense he may have committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses." So you can see by the biblical standard, any matter must be established with at least the testimony of 2 witnesses. This diver, which claims he got swallowed by the whale, is his own witness, and his friend that he says was following his bubbles on that day is witness number 2. Whether this man is a Christian or not is not clear, as he says nothing about the biblical story of Jonah. The Jonah story is a very important biblical truth because Jesus himself equated it to him being in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights when he said in Matthew 12, verse 40, "For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." So this Jonah story is extremely important as Jesus tells it as a future prophecy of his crucifixion, burial, and resurrection. I hope this short video has been edifying for the faith. We are now in those last days. Love God with all your heart and likewise love your neighbor. God bless. Peace.